Good morning, everybody. At least it's morning here. Good afternoon. My name is Renee Schimmer, Product Manager for HCL Connections, and we have about 15 minutes today to go through or show the code a little bit. I'll take this time to basically show you a couple of things again that I showed in the demo as well yesterday, where I walked through the scenario of how Felix Adams basically created a new community from scratch based on a template and used this to bring the people back to the local offices in his Frankfurt office, following the best practices that Woodburn Financial learned from other offices around the world. Hopefully I'll be joined by Andre in case some technical questions come up, but if not, I'll just go through some of the how we did things here in preparation for the demo. And I'll also show you a couple of other things with regards to the Office integration and how different ways of interacting with Teams and Outlook can look like. All right, so we have about 14 minutes left. Let's go right at it. And let's start with the actual community that I created yesterday during the demo for the Frankfurt office, returning to office Frankfurt. So this is the community that was created based on the template that Woodburn Financial Corporate provided, right? So we had all this content here, all the images pushed in, and this is one of the key elements of the new template that we are providing with Connection 7. Not only is the layout and the visual elements here being created by the template, no, it's also pushing everything, for example, like this Volt app here, part of the template and pushed over, right? You see this is a real Volt app. I guess we could have spent a bit more time in making it pretty. But it's a real Volt app, and it could be as deep and rich as you would like it to be. So all the wikis here, all the content was pushed over. In this session today, I am not going to show the element on how templates are managed, but there is a session tomorrow, Meet the Developers, where Mickey and the team will show you how the actual templates are managed, because what we see from an end user perspective is simply how you select the template and then everything happens for you, right? But what's important is that the actual templates that we can now provide with Connections and that you can build yourself, the flow is as follows. You create a community and then you request from the template admin that this community will be turned into a template. And then the template shows up, and I'll do that real quick. When we say create new template, and I'll create a new one here. Let's call that Returning to Office Vienna. Make it private. Select an image. So this is the same flow that I showed yesterday. So on this screen here, this is where the templates are shown that have been set up for this environment, right? You can do a type ahead, it filters the templates, etc. But in order to get the template here, like I said, first step, create a community. Second step, request from the template admin to turn it into a template. We put this gatekeeper in so you don't have a complete flooding of the system with templates that aren't really approved, right? You now have a gating factor where somebody can control the quality of the templates and that there are not too many and not 10 templates for the same purpose. Once these templates are approved, they show up here in the template catalog that a user can then select and create their community with. Okay, I'll cancel out of here. And again, this part of where the actual templates are managed, that you will see tomorrow in the Meet the Developer session. All right, so that's what I wanted to mention with regards to templates. Now let's talk about the landing page. Everything I'm doing here is on the preview server. If you already signed up for the preview, you have access to exactly what I'm doing here. This is everything that I'm doing here you have available on the preview server. There is nothing special, nothing different here. So everything I've done you can do yourself. And for example, this Frankfurt community I actually made public last night, so you could go in there as well. And one thing that I want to show you is how we updated the highlights feature. One note on highlights. Highlights is the new landing page for community, and it's based on the engagement center, right? No secret there. We will continue on that path to make highlights the default landing page for a community. And there's one thing here on the preview server that's different from what we will GA in 4 weeks, 3-4 weeks. GA, general availability. Right now, you still see highlights and overview. Overview is the quote-unquote old community landing page, right? The standard connections landing page. Moving forward, when you create a new community, highlights will be the new default landing page, and overview will be hidden for community members. So the confusion of, what's highlights, what's overview, will be gone moving forward with Connection 7, and highlights is a new default, and it will be displayed in the first position there. There were some questions yesterday during the demo when highlights switched over to the right. That will disappear on the actual release version of Connection 7. So let me walk you through what we see here in this palette, because that's really noteworthy. You see the palette of the Connections apps that I'm showing right now. So all of these apps here are the traditional Connections apps that you know from the past, right? So there you have your forum, you have your files, you have your events, you have the SharePoint library. All those things are the standard Connections apps, and you can add them to the page by simply clicking on them, and then they will be positioned down here in the grid somewhere. So here's an open spot in this grid. So if I select, for example, let's go with the, where is it? Files. I click Files. It will now be added to the page. And there we go. There's Files. Now I can go in and configure it and determine what files should be presented, right? Really straightforward. And of course, I can grab it and move it up and down, etc., so forth. So what are the other tabs here? So apps, like I said, are the actual Connections apps, and you can add some, and if you hid apps from the page, you can bring them back by selecting Hidden here and select them. So what's widgets? Widgets are different views on some of these apps or something completely outside the scope of the apps. So those are basically your previous engagement center widgets, where you can actually have a My Files view or a People Finder, which actually leverages the underlying Connections apps like profiles, but you'll be able to select a different view that's more appropriate for the community. So that's why we split them out between apps and widgets, right? But then the way this works is exactly the same. You click on the widget, adds it to the first open spot on the grid, and then you can go in and configure it. And since I mentioned the people selector, one great example would be here, your local COVID response team. That's the people selector where I added the 3 local contacts for the Frankfurt office. Okay, there are more things that you can do. You can switch the layout of the page. So there you'll see all the different grid options. Right now I have one here with a header and then 2, 3, 2, 3, 2 in the page, etc. Okay, so that's how we embedded highlights and made it easier to use and just more streamlined when it comes to giving community owners a way to customize their landing page and make it more engaging. So let's switch gears a little bit now. I used in the demo yesterday the Teams integration to show how you can actually have the conversation from Teams, Connections, kind of going back and forth seamlessly without making it hard to switch, right? You could open up Teams, and in Teams, you can see parts of the Connections community. So if I go to Teams here, I'm logged in as Felix Adams as well. Here is the Returning to Office Frankfurt channel. And again, all of this is on the preview server, right? So if you have access to the preview, you can log in as Felix Adams. We provided the credentials. He's part of that HCL Connections org, both on Connections and M365, so you can try that yourself. And up here, I added the forum and wiki app, where you can see exactly coming straight from Connections, the actual forum that you have within this Frankfurt community. But one thing I didn't show yesterday was how you can integrate between Teams and Connections in other ways. So for example, if I go to Lucy's profile page here, there we are, I can actually click on the chat button, and again, I will switch right into Teams and I can start a chat with her. So hi Lucy, right? And now I have easily switched from Connections into Teams to have a quick discussion here with Lucy. So you can do that, for example, if I go to home. I'm not sure what shows up in Orient Me now, because it's there might be some customer names, so just close your eyes. So I can actually go to a person here and hover over the important to me bubble for that person, and again, it opens up and goes to the chat. Didn't pick up the right name, but you know, it's a preview environment. So that's one important thing that I didn't mention yesterday. Anywhere you see a person and a profile card in Connections, you can start a chat. We're doing that here with Teams. Of course, you can do the same thing with Same Time, right? I just want to make sure everybody understands that. With Same Time, we have the integration on the previous versions. We're currently working on bringing that up to the latest Same Time version. Of course, we will do that as well. So one more thing around the Teams integration that I did not show yesterday. So here we are. Let's go back to the actual chat stream here, the posts. One additional way to integrate between Connections and Teams is by way of inserting things into the chat here. So here I am in a channel, the same Frankfurt channel, but you notice the Connections icon down here. So if I click this, I can actually now select files from my files, files shared with me, etc. Right? And simply insert that. So if I pick this sample Word document, I can now grab this and it's now shared with that Teams channel. I can do the same thing, not just for files, but if I click on recent history, I always have to do a little refresh step here. Come on. No. Live demo. So what we're supposed to see here are recently there we go. Now it's loading. So now we have everything I recently looked at in Connections. So there we have the community, because that was the last thing I looked at in Connections. So I can now insert a link to the community. I can insert a link to the wiki here, which was the menu in practice, the cafeteria, which I added yesterday throughout the demo. So I can insert that in here and now bring that content straight into the channel. So if I click on View Content, it will now open up my default browser. So we're switching to Safari now. And here is that menu that I added it yesterday during the demo and added the food truck comment here, if you remember that. Great. Let's see. There is one more thing. We're probably going to run out of time, but I'll show this based on a video because I don't have this set up to run live. But one other thing that I did not show yesterday was the Outlook integration. So here we have Outlook, and we have a completely new version of the Outlook plugin, right? This is not the old version. This is from the ground up new. And you can do two things with it at a high level. You can take an email that you received and save it into Connections as a wiki page, as a file with either the full EML or just the attachment. You can save it as a to-do and an activity. And if you send an email, you can actually insert a link. So here we see now how this, I saved it as an activity, and now there you have the email with the attachment saved as a to-do, which I can mark as done. And then the other thing you can do is you can actually compose an email and insert a file to the email as a shared link or an attachment if you must. But of course, typically you insert a shared link, and that way a person who receives the email can see the file, even though they might not have specific permissions. But by creating that shared link, you will then share that file and still have only one version of the truth, right? You're not duplicating, replicating. All right, those 15 minutes went by really fast again. I hope this was useful. You're probably on your way to the next session, but thank you for spending time here. Again, if you have questions, there's another session tomorrow, Meet the Developers, where all of this will be shown in much more detail. But for now, thank you and enjoy the rest of the show.